The Nakajima green has just dried like around 24 hours now. It is more or less completely dry, and you see the finished look of the aircraft. Now it's just the paint dry. There's no varnish on it. There is no wash in the panel lines, nothing. It's just the paint. Now, because my current project is for a body build, I decided that I wanted to have something special for this. And since we are doing the Edward 148 scale A6M20 Type 21, I thought that it would be cool to paint the model in the same way that the original aircraft were painted. So first we have a metal surface, aluminum, then a coat of red primer over it, and then the final paint coats. Now I'm doing this body build together with Fatbrush Studios. You should definitely check his Instagram account. If you don't follow already, then make sure you follow the guy. And yeah, we are building the same kit at the same time. He's doing another version than mine. Now, speaking of the version, I picked version E of the kit simply because I really love the color and I absolutely adore these decals with Japanese letters, you know, like when I have a Japanese aircraft, I love it when the decals have some sort of a Japanese letter on it. So I picked this version, and it was only then, later, that I read properly, and I read here that this is a Kamikaze aircraft. Like, this aircraft went on a Kamikaze mission. Like a mission with no return. So I did a little research about Kamikaze aircraft, and I found out that these aircraft usually were like worn aircraft, older aircraft, slightly damaged aircraft which needed some reparations. So they were still flyable and manageable, but not 100%, but they would use those for these Kamikaze missions. So it was at that moment when I realized that I have to change my original plan to make a kind of a not factory fresh look, but not too worn, not too heavy worn, because I really wanted to have the Nakajima dark green shiny. But since I picked a Kamikaze aircraft, this would be very unlikely, so I had to give it a worn look. Now, in order to have a metal-like smooth surface, I primed the entire model with black gloss surface primer. I used Vallejo's acrylic black gloss primer, which really dries super smooth. It creates a very smooth surface and it's high gloss. Just apply a few coats. It needs a few coats and to really achieve and get this glossy look. Then the first paint I used was matte aluminum. I used Emo acrylic paints for that. And I just covered the entire model with the matte aluminum to imitate the metal surface, the aluminum that the aircraft was made of. I really like and somehow a bit discovered the matte aluminum in this paint job here because it's cool. It's like a metal color, but it's not completely shiny and not silver-like, because I don't like silver. I don't think it looks real. And yeah, it's a bit difficult to get a metal-like color, but which has not the silver look. Now the aircrafts were primed with red primer. So I made a mix with red and hull red. I just stolen the idea of Fatbrush Studios because I saw him doing this during the body build. And yeah, I wanted to use the red brown that I bought for because some parts need to be red brown in this build. But then I thought that the red brown is too dark, so I went for a mix with red and hull red. I can't remember the exact mix now because I just, you know, started somewhere and ended somewhere completely else and I didn't count. But what I was trying to do, and I forgot it with the first one, that to leave out all the flaps, the ailerons and the rudders, because my research about the Zero told me that the rudders and ailerons, they were made out of fabric and not metal. So yeah, basically I shouldn't have painted those with aluminum, but I'll take care of this later in the build. After the red primer had just dried like a few minutes, I started scratching it and worn it out a bit with a simple toothbrush. Now with these Vallejo paints, it works very well, just as long as they didn't dry completely. You can really easily chip them, chip the color away, and yeah, it's like natural chipping actually, because you really chip the color away without using a chipping fluid or something. It's just the aluminum coat under it, which has completely dried, and the red primer coat, which hasn't. So now here I'm taking care of the mistake I did to also paint everything, ailerons, rudders and flaps with aluminum. So I painted it with a matte drying hemp color. Gave it a few coats. This is like the second or third coat. I use a flat brush for this. It's very handy for that. So the next step were some dark panel line shading, as I call it. Before I do this, it's always good to, you know, practice a bit your airbrush skills. I didn't want to have a too big of a contrast, so I didn't use black for the panel line shading. And here, as always, make sure like you stay on the panel line, but you don't have to be too exact. Because what you want to create is shadows, and yeah, you don't need to be too exact and too precise in this. On the top surface, because there the top surface will be covered with a dark green in the end, so here I used rubber black, a more darker color, to do the panel line shading. Now this next step after the panel line shading was a bit a coloring of some panels, and I used the gray green, a very bright green color, because I wanted to imitate like the bleached out dark green, which will come on top of it. So I wanted to have a difference, create a difference between the red primer surface, which probably would then dry darker with a dark green over it, and the areas were already bleached out a bit. And I assumed this should be around the wing root, not at the wing tips, not in these areas, but around the wing root, and just at some random spots. Then I also wanted to have a bit a worn look of the primer at some points. So I used this bright orange just to create another tone, just to create a bleached out primer look. Now after I did all this, it was finally time to lay down the top colors, the main coats. And for the undersurface, I used the undersurface is supposed to be in this highly contested navy gray. I used the ash gray tone that I had. It was a very good moment to try out the Atom colors, the new color range of Amomig. Now maybe I have to talk more about the Atom colors in a separate video, but what I found out is that they have a very high coverage. Actually, I painted some parts, a hand brush painted it with these Atom colors without even priming it, and it looked very fine in the end. So you can really use this just without primer basically if you need to. So I really had to thin it down a lot to make sure I don't cover everything with this high coverage Atom colors. This is the finished look of the pre-shading moments before I start painting with the Nakashima green. Nakashima green, you maybe ask yourself? Yes, I know typically the Zero was a Mitsubishi build. It's the Mitsubishi A6 M20, but Nakashima also produced some in the war, because especially in the later stages of the war, and this aircraft particularly was a Nakajima produced Zero. That's why I used the Nakajima green. I just went over it, covered the entire model with 1 or 2 thin coats, and only then I just went in a few panels and painted those a bit, you know, to have a bit higher coverage there, to get a tone variation within the different types of coverages that I could achieve. Now, I told you that the version I picked was a Kamikaze, an aircraft which went on a Kamikaze mission. And my research also told me that these aircraft usually were not like, they were quite old, they were maybe damaged a bit, they came from reparations or just, no, they came into reparations, maybe they were like, you could operate them, but not 100%. So, yeah, I had to really create a worn look, a weathered look. That's why I really took care that I don't cover too much, because I don't want to spend too much time in post shading. That's why I spent more time with pre-shading, because that's what I enjoy really. So here is the finished look. The Nakajima green has just dried like around 24 hours now. It is more or less completely dry, and you see the finished look of the aircraft. Now there is no, it's just the paint dried. There's no varnish on it. There is no wash in the panel lines, nothing. It's just the paint. But I wanted to show you this in this raw state, just around 24 to 48 hours after the paint had dried. So by the way, Rusty gang, whoever wrote me an email to get some of the Rustyscale Show stickers, or to participate also in winning a the Rustyscale engraved pocket knife, the sendings are out. Everything is on its way, okay? It's coming, it's coming. Just hold on a little bit more, it'll come. I'm sorry for the delay, but you know, I apologize, but it's a one-man show here. I mean, give me a break, bro.